Hello, I'm Scott Hammond from INSEAD Communications, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Professor Yves Doz and Mikko Kosonen to our studio to talk about a new book that's just come out called Fast Strategy. Thank you for coming, both of you. Yves is a professor here on our Fontainebleau campus of strategic management and innovation. Mikko, however, comes from the industrial sector. He's currently with the Finnish Innovation Fund, but previous to that he was the CIO and head of strategy for Nokia. One of you is a theorist, the other one of you is actually a practitioner of that, and this is a very interesting collaboration. How did that come about?
We've known each other for like a dozen years, so it's not exactly like we met off the street a few weeks ago. Over time, I've done some work and seminars with Nokia, and Mikko was working with me on some projects for the Helsinki School of Economics and some research already. So it kind of it grew naturally. And Nokia has this wonderful system whereby they give a year off, like an academic sabbatical, to some of their best and brightest people. So Mikko was a beneficiary of that. And he knocked on my door saying, can we do something together? That's how it came about. Originally, I was thinking I would work with him a little bit like I would work with a doctoral student. In other words, he would do the work and I would supervise the work. We became very much involved, both of us, as co-researchers. And I think the nice thing about this is when you look at this work, it's fueled, it's fed by the experience of Mikko and Nokia on the one side, plus all of these other studies we did at IBM and Intel and so on. But it's an interplay between, it has been a constant interplay between kind of theoretical contributions, what I bring from the academic side, and what Nokia and these companies and Mikko's experience we're bringing from the practical side. So we had these long, endless retreats, we call them, where we were spending 10 days locked up in northern Finland, not even going out of the chalet, just in order to try to make sense of what we were observing. And we had the same in Brittany, and we spent a dreary week in December in Boston, and so on. So we had these long and kind of soul-searching meetings where we were trying to bring theory and practical evidence together.
The subtitle of the book is How Strategic Agility Will Help You Stay Ahead of the Game. Could you talk just a little bit about what you mean when you say strategic agility?
I have personally kind of experienced kind of the challenges of strategic agility for years. I mean, and I was struggling with strategic agility for years in my double role as the head of strategy and CIO of the company. And in those roles, I got familiar with two dimensions of strategic agility. Then in our research we kind of found and explored the third one. But the two ones that came familiar to me were really the kind of the strategic sensitivity, the cognitive dimension of an organization. I mean, how does it kind of perceive the world, and is it open-minded enough or not? And then the second one is then the resource fluidity. Of course, I mean, I did not call it resource fluidity first, but that was the kind of the territory that I was dealing with in my role as a CIO, trying to kind of really create an organizational structure that is more flexible, adjustable to different changes, continuously more and more kind of a fast-changing environment. Because many companies are kind of stuck and with their kind of organizational structure. Even if they wanted to change, they can't. And also, I personally experienced how Nokia, as a leading company, kind of gradually lost some of its kind of strategic sensitivity and resource fluidity as a result of successful growth. It was in the first years, in the early 90s, it won over Ericsson and Motorola because of its strategic agility. Ericsson and Motorola both were very much kind of building their organization around comprehensive subsidiaries in each country in the world, and they have very strong business units with a lot of autonomy, whereas Nokia then built right on a kind of globally configured organization, production where it made sense, R&D where it made sense, much lighter and fast-moving organization.
So you talk about agility, you talk about fluidity. Concretely, does that mean fluidity, agility in your thinking or in the organizational structure?
It's both, really.
It's both.
In a way, I mean, what we're arguing is you need mental and cognitive agility. which we call strategic sensitivity, but basically be very open to the world and be very able to capture events, make sense of developing situations as they occur. I think one of the critical changes is it used to be that companies were able to do strategy and then basically to go into implementing strategy for like 5-10 years and then think again, what are we going to do next? I think today it's very different. So you have this constant alertness, this constant awareness of what goes around you, and this constant mental sensitivity and agility. At the same time, that would remain just completely useless unless you also have this ability to redeploy resources fast. And that's where we come into the fluidity of resources, the ability to invest, to divest, to build businesses, to provide infrastructure, to have new businesses up and running in a few days, and also be able, if it doesn't work, to withdraw at limited cost and then do something else. And then the third thing we discovered, in a sense, is obviously, in order to do this, you need to, there is another kind of conflicting set of forces, which are, to implement strategy, you need to decentralize, you need to create subunits and the like. At the same time, to redeploy resources, you need to break up subunits and regroup. And that's obviously very difficult. So there is this constant tension between decentralization and delegation and reunification of the company. And that's where this third dimension we call leadership unity comes into play. The collective commitments needed to redeploy resources are impossible unless the top management team acts as a team, in a sense, rather than a collection of individuals.
And from what Mikko is saying, it seems like it's easy to become victims of your own success.
Exactly. Your vision starts to be kind of more and more tunnel-like, and you just kind of repeat the kind of success formula, and then your resources become trapped in different kind of organizational silos. Your leadership unity also starts deteriorating because the leaders of different units, they start minding only of their own business, and there is not the cabinet responsibility, the collective kind of responsibility and commitment for further developing the cooperation.
Both managers and researchers are focused on organizational and interpersonal levers. And in some way what they tend to miss is the emotional dimension of commitment. And I think Nokia, probably because it was led by a team of young, very ambitious people with a lot to win, nothing to lose, and a lot of energy, Nokia was a very emotionally energized organization then. And second, what we also found is the real importance, and this is in a sense known, but I think we certainly saw it very vividly, it's the importance of how people think about opportunities. And again, the danger of established companies having kind of blinders put on their ability to perceive the outside world, and therefore being kind of narrowed down to some form of tunnel vision. And therefore the wider angle you can have in terms of the lenses you look at the world, and the more challenging and disruptive the cognitive perceptions you can have, the better off you are. These are two very strong observations which lead us to see that in a way, the traditional kind of change models tend to focus too exclusively on this organizational and political dimensions to the exclusion of the other two.
Is this a phenomenon, a problem that is exclusive to the high-tech sector? Why is it those companies, are they more vulnerable to the dangers of not being able to change quickly?
Yes, but it's not exclusive to them. My sense is, behind that, you could look at the two driving trends a little more abstractly. One is the speed of change, and in a sense the IT industry has seen several major changes in a few years, from client-server computing to the advent of the internet to voice over IP and the convergence of various segments and so on. So change is happening fast. If we had looked at the jet engine industry, we might have found the same patterns, but we would be dead before completing the research. And then the second trend is the traditional models of strategy do not work, and companies are taken by surprise when change is systemic and non-linear, where things happen in very interdependent ways, and therefore the traditional kind of scenario planning, trend analysis and the like does not work very well. So we found that in IT, but you go today and you speak to people in the food industry, and they talk about the environment and wellness and health and major changes in advertising and distribution systems and the death of the supermarket and whatever else, and you would probably find some of the same. It plays out a little more slowly.
It's been really kind of amazing or surprising positively how widely our findings can be applied and how applicable they are beyond ICT industry, because the same phenomena that has first taken place in the ICT industry is taking place elsewhere. I mean, the speed of change is increasing, the complexity, the nature of change is also changing and becoming more complex. The digital convergence and technology development overall is having a huge impact on practically all industries.
One of the things that intrigued me is you talk about depoliticizing top management. What's involved in that?
That's probably the most at least to me, it was the biggest really finding and learning from the book was this whole notion of leadership unity and the importance of leadership unity, and how companies really need to pay attention to the mechanisms that sustain leadership unity. You need to have a portfolio of businesses, but that needs to be integrated. So it's not the old-fashioned conglomerate where you derive value from autonomy, but now you derive value from integration, strategic integration. And that's very, very difficult for most of the business leaders who are trained to be autonomous hero leaders, running their own fiefdom. And what we found in all the companies we studied, these interdependent structures, where the top team members were also structurally made completely dependent on each other. They could not make any decisions, any bigger decisions, without discussing with each other and agreeing and sticking together.
So I think somehow we need to create some form of collegiate responsibility at the top, where the top team is collectively responsible for the whole collection of businesses and series of activities of the company. One level down, we can say, okay, we got subunit managers in charge of their subunits. But if you have at the same time people who play a corporate role and the subunit role, and the corporate role is not the primary role, then it's very difficult to get any cooperation which works, which then locks the CEO into essentially mirroring that pattern of decentralized responsibility by dealing with people one-on-one and making collective commitments, reallocation of resources across businesses, for instance, difficult.
So I want to underline that having collective responsibility does not equal lack of accountability. It's very important that you have the accountability in place all the time.
Yves, Mikko, thank you for sharing these ideas with us today. I'm Scott Hammond for INSEAD Communications. Thanks for joining us.